Okay. Let's start. So this is a LESLLA started the coffee breaks when we were not able to go to Sweden for the symposium in 2020. And that's why my, so to say, antecedent decided to use a Swedish word for this coffee breaks, that fika, that in Swedish is a moment to slow down and appreciate the good things of life. This is the spirit of our meetings. It's a way to stay connected between symposiums. Go ahead, please.
Sure.
So I see that Anne-Marie is greeting everyone from Amsterdam. I'm speaking from Italy, from Bologna. And Lorenzo, you are in Perugia or in Rome?
In the between.
In the between. Okay.
No, I'm at home, closer to Perugia than to Rome.
I
was in Rome since lunchtime.
Okay. So, if everyone would like to write in the chat where you are, we are very curious and pleased to know where people are. And I look at the chat, Liverpool, the Netherlands, UK, Canada, and USA, Netherlands, many from Netherlands, Canada, and Lorenzo, Indiana, that's USA, Oregon, Michigan, different parts of the United States, and Norway, and Bologna, and also Italy. So, welcome to everybody. Lorenzo, please. What is the purpose of this meeting, of this coffee break, is to connect, as I said, with fellow LESLLA educators in between symposiums, but also to learn about relevant topics from LESLLA experts, and finally, to inform you about a few LESLLA updates. So we can go on. And today, I'm very pleased to introduce today's topic, that is assessing low literate migrants within the learning environment, the LAMI-LASLAM assessment tools. And this presentation will be held by Lorenzo Rocca, a very good friend from Italy. I introduce him shortly. Lorenzo Rocca is responsible for the language project department of the Dante Alighieri Society. Dante Alighieri is an important institution for Italian language and one of the 4 official institutions for Italian language certification. And he has been engaged in test development, a teacher training for over 20 years, and he has researched a lot on assessment in the migration context. And Lorenzo is the chair of the special interest group on language assessment for migration and integration of the ALTE Association, which means the Association of Language Testers in Europe. And he is also a member of the expert committee of the LIAM project of the Council of Europe. And Finnish is one of the authors of the reference guide, Literacy and Second Language Learning for Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrant. Is a member of the team. The other are Jan Kurvers, Karen Schramm, Roland Naeb, and myself. So please, Lorenzo, go ahead. So we are very happy to have him with us. Lorenzo, the next slide. This is a multilingual, bilingual, actually, workshop in 2 sessions. Now we have an explanation in English of the design of these tools. And then the next hour, we will have a presentation in Italian on the elaboration of the assessment tools. But I have to say that everyone who can speak a little bit of Italian is invited to follow also the second part. And I would like, before giving the floor to Lorenzo, I would say that this is the sort of experimentation for, because it's the first bilingual workshop or coffee break organized by LESLLA. Multilingualism is one of the key values of our association, and we would like to practice it, not only preaching it. So that's why we try to start a multilingual series of coffee break. So I give the floor to Lorenzo, and see you later.
Okay. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you for the warm welcoming. You forgot to mention that Lorenzo was also a student of Fernanda some years ago, and then mostly a colleague and above all a friend. So a warm welcome to everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on your position in the world. And thank first for having invited me to give a contribution to the LESLLA coffee break. As Fernanda said, the outline of my speech provides, I would say, three main points. The one you are seeing in the slides, the current set with two sets of slides, so two PowerPoint files in brief, the current set in English and the next in Italian. In this set that I'm going to address, the first 2 points here present, so the explanation of the 2 acronyms, LAMI and LASLLIAM, underpinning and the actions underpinning them, and the sharing of considerations about around the features related to assessing low literate adult migrants in general, not immediately in relation to the LAMI-LASLLIAM assessment tools. Sorry. Then, in Italian, I will propose some concrete examples of these LAMI-LASLLIAM tools, coherent, at least I hope, with the considerations previously pointed out. Indeed, these 2 acronyms, LEAM and LAMI, before going to LAMI and LASLLIAM, are very significant for me, for my professional life, because are central, where and are central in my professional life experience, and in some sense they represent my engagement in the field. LEAM stands for Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants, and LAMI, as Fernanda said, the Language Assessment for Migration and Integration. LEAM is part of the Council of Europe, that is the supranational organization founded in 1949 and based in Strasbourg, that now is composed by 46 member states. So all the members of the European Union, plus other members in a enlarged view of the Europe continent. Since its foundation, so since 1949, the Council sustains the mutual understanding between countries, being aware also that learning their respective languages and cultures is one of the most effective measures for this mutual understanding and this permanent dialogue. In 2006, a particular emphasis on the migration context, on the migration learners, was underlined by the establishment of this project named LEAM. I was honored to join LEAM in 2014, and LEAM, I would say, as a central part within the broader frame of the language policy unit of Strasbourg, of the Council. I mean, the mission to deal with all the challenges mainly linguistic challenges imposed in the Council of Europe member states by the migration flows. So, within the Council of Europe Education Department, LIAM aims to support both policymakers, decision makers, and professionals, language testers, teachers, volunteers, in terms of both, again, resources, practical tools, but also, of course, frame. As the Council always highlights, integration is a two-way process, leading to an active participation in all areas of society. And language, as all we know, is of course a facilitator of this complex integration process, but again, as all we well know, it is not a guarantee for a successful integration, especially for adult migrants who are vastly heterogeneous group. In fact, their experiences and the current life situations are very diverse. Migrants are often well aware of the fact that they need to learn the majority language, the language of the host country, in order not to only to get access to labor or education, but also in most member states to obtain access to welfare, to obtain the temporary residency, the permanent residency, the naturalization. And the ongoing tension, I'm referring to this in this slide, becomes even more critical in case of the so-called vulnerable adult migrants. With this regard, I would like to remind this that I consider an important and recent May 2021 document adopted 2 years ago by the Committee of Ministries of the Council of Europe. It's exactly the Council Action Plan aimed to promote vulnerable persons in the context of migration. And under the actions provided by this action plan, within the pillar number 3, we can see the ongoing commitment and the growing commitment of the Council addressing this particular kind of people, vulnerable persons, such as refugees in a broader sense, so including asylum seekers, low literate and low literate adult migrants, and children, again, children in the sense of minors, so including adolescents, starting from unaccompanied minors. Within this commitment that of course involve different levels, for instance, social housing, for instance, financing, access to the labor market, but of course language plays again a crucial role. And that's to say how LIAM was asked to contribute to such commitment, and the result of this of its growing engagement with regard to the vulnerable migrants has been, for instance, the toolkit launched in 2017. Toolkit is a platform that contains 56 tools available in 8, because very recently, 1 month ago, was added the Spanish version of the toolkit with a translation provided by the Instituto Cervantes. So 8 language versions, again, in favor of the multilingualism, aimed at the linguistic support for asylum seekers and refugees. All the tools within the toolkit are targeted above all to support volunteers more than professional teachers involved in the field. In any way, most of the tools were and are used also by professional teachers. In 2002, LESLLA, so the reference guide targeted to migrants who are facing the complex task and demanding task of learning a language while either learning to read and write for their first time. This year, the forthcoming toolkit for young migrants, again, children, but also adolescents, composed by 60 tools, part of them totally new, part as adapted, revised, updated tools taken from the aforementioned toolkit. According to the topic of my talk, today, of course, the focus is on LASLIAM. And I would prefer to take for granted the general introduction about LASLIAM. Fernanda helps me in this sense. So I would avoid to maybe to repeat aims, users, and target learners of LASLIAM in order to save time to focus on the LASLIAM assessment tools, starting from saying some words about the second acronym and the other part of the anagram LAMILIAM, so exactly LAMI. But of course, if you have any question about LASLIAM, you can write your question in the chat, or you can interact with me at the end of my first part of contribution in English. LAMI. Since its foundation in 2002, the LAMI Special Interest Group, I'm coordinating since 2008, represent the ALTE professional platform to allow that issues of test fairness within the migration context were addressed. In coherence with the ALTE I would say, ALTE general missions that you can see immediately going into the ALTE website homepage. And so the first, maximizing the positive impact of the exams developed by ALTE members, and then respect the diversity of the language users, and in the ALTE case, the language test takers. In the LAMI section of the ALTE website, you can find many resources that LAMI developed in its first 21 years. As a result of our work, let me mention this occasion at least 2 documents, as they constitute the evidences of the connections beyond the anagram LAMILIAM. I'm referring to the LAMI position paper on on my left, so with the back in white and the tree, and this this position paper is named the language tests for access, integration, and citizenship, and outline for policymakers. So mainly is a position paper. It is not a technical document. The target reader are also or mainly policymakers. It was published in 2016. It's present in the ALTE as well in this Council of Europe website, and it is strictly linked. In some sense, it anticipated the issue, then put in evidence by the second document on my right. So the result, the report from the last Council of Europe and ALTE European survey about language and knowledge of society requirements for migrants within the Council of Europe member states. And this report includes also information about learning opportunities offered to migrants.
Ma no, ma ho capito, però lo sai.
Sorry. So language opportunities offered to migrants by the same member states. You see, I am introducing the team of assessing low literate migrants. That is one of the 4 declared possible use of LASLIAM. But
Almeno chiudi.
Microfono aperto. Okay. Grazie, Fernanda. I was saying one of the declared use of LASLIAM.
Ma no, ho detto l'acqua calda, sto già...
Who is speaking? C'è qualcuno che parla dietro. Who is
It
speaking?
is Paola, and I keep muting her, but she keeps turning on her microphone, so I'll keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Okay. So I was saying that one of the possible use of LASLIAM is, of course, related also to assessment, in the sense that LASLIAM can serve to produce assessment tools, but with a strong limitation. So assessment tools possible to be developed and above all to be used only within the learning environment. Let me explain this statement. And so, although as in the CFR companion volume was written, the scales of illustrative descriptors are not assessment scales, they can represent, in any case, a useful source for the development of assessment tools to the extent that these tools aim at pedagogical work. The shifting of the target learner from the CFR literate social agent to the low literate and non-literate migrant involved in a formative path, the shifting imposed by LASLIAM, implies that LASLIAM descriptors are learning goals that can usually only be achieved and so assessed within a learning environment, both educational or vocational. In this slide, for two times, I referred to the CFR, that of course is a very well-known resource document within the European context and also abroad, but maybe I would spend 10 seconds for the colleagues outside Europe to remind the importance of the CFR, so the common European framework of references for languages that the Council of Europe developed, or better, published in 2001 in its first edition. The work under the CFR started in 1996 and allowed the publication in 2001. Then, in the last 20 years, more than 40 language versions of CFR were published. And so, of course, I can say, I think that the CFR represents the most disseminated and well-known document in the language field of the Council of Europe, because according to the CFR in the last 20 years, all the stakeholders, I can say, language schools, both state and private language schools, university for foreigners, language in the language testing field, so language certification bodies, structured or restructured their exams, their courses according to the scaled progression proposed by the CFR. The scaled progression that provides 6 levels of language competencies, language competence from the first level, the A1, to the last level, C2. So 3 bands of competence, of language competence: band A, 2 levels, A1 and A2, beginner; level band B, B1 and B2 for independent user; and band C with C1 and C2 levels for proficient users. It's important, in addition, to remind, as in 2020, the Council of Europe published not an updated version, but a companion volume to the CFR with a new set of descriptors and some updated descriptors after 20 years needed of the ones presenting the CFR for some, in particular, communicative language activities scales. The totally new descriptors that the CFR 2020, the companion volume, launched are the ones related mainly to mediation as additional component of the broader competence of the language users that in any case is a literate social agent and not the vulnerable learner to which LESLLA is focused on. Yeah, so sorry for this brief digression about the CFR, and sorry if for all was already well known, but I thought it was important to give some mini reference to this important framework, very used in, at least in the European context. So, by consequence of the aforementioned shift in thinking the target learner, the LESLLA learning goals expected cannot be seen as benchmark to be achieved in designing high-stakes and large-scale standardized tests, where for high-stakes exams, I'm referring to the exam that have an important impact in the life of test takers. In the migration context, for sure, important impact, for instance, related to the access to welfare, permanent residency, citizenship, but not only in the migration context. High-stakes exams, for instance, are the typical pre-entry test for the higher education, for the academic entrances, and also these kind of tests are high-stakes exams. Large scale, of course, are those exams that admit a large number of candidates of test takers. Okay. In this case, I'm referring, I would like to quote the last recommendation from the Council of Europe related to the issues of the so-called integration tests. So the compulsory test that imposed in more or less all or quite all the member states that imposed and are imposing language and knowledge of society requirements to all migrants, including LESLLA learners. It's important from the recommendation to be aware of the limitation of tests and ensure that they contribute to integration and do not become a barrier to it. This is because the required standards sometimes, I would say often, exceed what is reasonably obtainable, leading to the exclusion of many people, and I would say, would add in particular the most vulnerable people, such as low literate and no literate migrants. And so in this case, this raises human rights issues. So the conclusion of this quotation is that rather than promoting testing, in particular testing disconnected to the learning environment, disconnected to learning and teaching, offering language courses may offer greater advantages without running the risk of excluding migrants. These are political statements because the recommendation came from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Is not, of course, a document for technicians. Okay, so here we are. Which are the features of the assessment according to LESLLA? That's the question at this point of my speech. I would like in particular to share with you 3 approaches to be adopted in assessing procedures as defined in LESLLA, in particular in the chapter 6 dedicated to assess. These are the first 2 highly recommended approaches. So, sorry. Okay. The learning-oriented approach in terms of learning-oriented assessment that provides the involvement of the learner within each phase of the assessment process. In this case, considering in particular the colleagues from United States and Canada, I'm referring to the also recent studies of Jim Purpura from Columbia University of New York, who produced many strong considerations and resources about the learner-oriented assessment and the scenario-based assessment too. And the second approach, LESLLA, the LESLLA scales are absolutely not intended to fix any cutoff point that would establish that any binary exit pass-fail is not admitted by LESLLA, because a LESLLA learner should receive only positive feedback also as outcome of any kind of test she will do within the learning environment. The third approach concerns the language profile way of thinking, I would say, and that it's a more authentic, more dynamic, for sure, or maybe it's up to you to decide, more challenging way in comparison to the more static, more less dynamic way to think about fixed levels of proficiency. In which sense? In the sense that teachers, volunteers, are invited to draw a differentiated profile of the learner, giving evidence only of what is achieved. The recommended profiling can go across levels, as you can see by the example, the three examples of uneven profile in the picture, aspiring to be representative of the, again, an even spectrum of competence of every learners, and so sustaining the assessment of such competence, even if the assessment will be partial, in the sense that it may concern a language activity, production, interaction, reception, a particular domain, only public or also or personal, or also occupational or educational, and or specific tasks, specific categories within the macro and the broader frame of set of language activities, domains, tasks, situations, and categories. Okay. So, in application, I would say, of the just mentioned three approaches, so LOA, the positive outcomes, and the profiling approaches, these are possible assessment tools considered by LESLLA. It's analysis, placement, diagnostic, scenario-based, and of course exam, checklist for self-assessment. Short parenthesis about this last one, because as a concrete example, apart from the examples we are going to see considering LAT, it is already provided, this example, within the LESLLA publication itself. I'm referring to the appendix 3. In this appendix, there is the table with the I can do list. It's an important activity to be repeated that we, as LESLLA authoring group, we suggest to repeat on regular basis, so that predicting and reflecting can become natural parts of the learning process. The four statements you see below are addressing a separate skill, are just examples. Teacher can use the grid, this grid as a template for other checklists for instance, focusing only on one activity or one skill. That's the explanation of the smiley faces and of their number, as you just seen in the previous slide. One smile means I can do this, so they can do provided in the target language with a lot of help. Two smileys means I can do the same with some help. Three smileys means I can do the same again in the target language without any help. So again, only smiley faces are provided. Self-assessment as well as assessment in general should always lead to a positive outcome. And coming back to the example of statements, please note and consider that all the four statements proposed as examples start with I can, again to express in a positive way, and are very concrete, reflecting everyday use of the language, avoiding abstract terms like accurate, correct, precise, and also they should be short and simple. Okay. Apart from the checklist, thanks to the result of the LESLLA piloting, now these are other forms and correspondent tools related to assessment are available. Here you can see all the picture concerning the outcome of the piloting. So, for instance, not only assessment tools, but above all, other kind of teaching materials like learning units, exercises, tasks, digital tools, portfolios, cumulative scenarios, and also some activities focused on strategies, language use strategies. But in this afternoon with me, the focus will go on placement and needs analysis and of course exams. So all the set of tools related to, again, to assessment. But before starting, or better, in introducing LESLLA assessment tools, I would like, first of all, to link these three kind of tools I put in evidence in the slide with the portfolio. I think it's very important. I'm referring to another Council of Europe important tool, more or less developed in the same years of the first edition of the CFR, so the European Language Portfolio that has a diverse kind of target reader, not taught for teachers, stakeholders in the field, language testers, researchers, but mainly was taught directly for a tool for the learner. And so, in which sense I would like to link the LAT outcomes with the European Language Portfolio, because the LESLLA assessment tools should lead to the implementation, in any case, of the language portfolio, that quoting CFR is designed, the portfolio, to include not only any official recognition obtained, for instance, language certification, but also is designed to include a record of more informal experiences involving contacts with languages and contacts with any other culture. So we strongly hope that the use of LAT will support our target learners to document, to take trace, to present different aspects of her language passport, discovered from the very beginning of the learning process, of the learning path. So starting from the so-called welcome phase, and including their plurilingual repertoire, including means giving values to the plurilingual repertoire. That means give value to the diverse languages, to the concept of respecting diversity in using and in giving the same dignity to all the languages. And also the language biography has emerged starting from the welcome phase, but during all the course, and also the language dossier. So the last part, covering all the three sections of the European language portfolio: passport, biography, dossier, in the order they are presented in the portfolio itself. And in the dossier in particular, to take trace of any achievement as a result of the involvement in a learning environment, in the learning process. Okay. See a message from Fernanda. Maybe it's urgent. Yes, I know, Fernanda. I have 7 minutes. Okay. So first, I would like to highlight as LAT represented teamwork result with 19 colleagues, Altelami members, that worked on it from 13 Alte institutions, representing 12 languages, and all together we developed LAT, also providing a qualitative validation in the last year. LAT means 4 explanatory tools to illustrate the use of LASIAM for assessment purposes. The LASIAM assessment tools reflect, of course, the action-oriented approach of CFR, which views language learners, first of all, as social agents engaged in communicative tasks. In particular, we take into account in LAT tasks based on communicative language activities involving both oral and written production and interaction. The 4 tools are this one. The first is needs analysis plus placement only related to the oral dimension from level 1 to level 4. So considering all the scaled progression provided by LASIAM. An interview within the welcome phase, we considered for this tool the descriptors taken from the 3 LASIAM overall scales of oral reception, production, and interaction, plus only 1 specific scale related to the category interview and being interviewed. The second tool is the remaining part of placement, so the one related to the written dimension, so reading and writing tasks, again for the 4 LASIAM levels, by considering the other 3 overall scales, in this case, again, reception, production, interaction, but not spoken, written in this case. The third tool within LAT is the first example of end of course horizontal exam. Is related to the LASIAM level 2, and it covers all the community language activities. So by considering all the 6 overall scales as aforementioned. The last tool is again another example, different example of end of course exam, because it's related to a different level, not level 2, but level 3. It is focused only on reading, and it's presented as adaptive and transversal exams. Adaptive in the sense that it covers all the 4 possible domains, and transversal in the sense that it covers all the 5 categories represented by the specific scales for reading, written reception, present both in CFR and in LASIAM. The 4 domains are the personal, the public, the occupational, and the educational domains. So the domains related to the daily use of the language. Okay? Very briefly, this is the process that allowed the development of LAT. The first development phase from last February to June 2022. Then we translated the first version in English, used it as working language, of course, in other 11 versions. And then we piloted from a qualitative perspective from September to November of last year, all the 4 tools, arriving at the revision in the light of the piloting outcomes. And now we are ready, more or less, to launch next month LAT officially. Okay. Just to say that, okay, what beyond the LAT before finishing my first part and entering into much details with some example of concrete tasks and components present in LAT. The second part of this year, after the official launch and beyond this year, we would like to add new languages, so the translations, and considering in particular the first 2 tools, we would strongly would like to start in collecting learners testing products, so samples of the 4 LASIAM levels for different languages, like the CFR so-called benchmarking project, but the benchmarking project was mainly related to spoken interaction and production of, in addition. We would like also to add samples of written production, written interaction from LASIAM level 1 to LASIAM level 4, according to the use of LAT tool 1 and tool 2. Then for tool 3, we would like to develop a concrete, and of course exam based on our validated specifications. And in relation to tool 4, we would like to add to the already finished qualitative validation a quantitative validation, thanks to an item post-test analysis of the 14 closed reading items included in tool. Okay, this is the list of the languages that I think can allow me to state that LAS is a multilingual outcome, that LAT sustains diversity, and you can see listed the languages. And I think these are some data from the LAT piloting. We collected feedback from more than 100 users, mainly teachers, but also volunteers in associations, and from more than 1,000 LESLLA learners. And so in order to share feedback with teachers who used LAT, 11 focus groups were organized at European level under the moderation of the LAMI members involved in LAT. And the overall result was very positive. Educators in general highlighted the need for tools like this, mentioning as most positive aspects the inclusive approaches of LAT and the sustainability of the tasks provided. The guidelines for users were judged as easy to understand, exhaustive and practical. The instruction for learners were characterized as precise and helpful for users, but somehow perceived as too difficult for learners. So I'm finishing 2 slides and then I finish this part. RFI stands for Recommendation for Improvements. It's a very common acronym in the ALTE world. We use it within our auditing system for the official exams. And it means for LAT that looking at the task providers, the format was considered correct. However, users gave many useful suggestions for changings, even of details, replacing some words, rewordings of a few sentences, modifying an item, sequences, or selecting a different picture, adding more explanatory footnotes, something like that, with the common aim of these suggestions to improve adequacy by limiting at the same time as much as possible cultural implications and, of course, sensible topics. with this brief report of the LAT piloting, I think I have completed the first introduction to the every kind of assessment tools based on LESLLA, giving some very brief information about LAT. So first of all, thanks for your attention, and maybe at this moment I would like to close the sharing of my screen, also to have the possibility to have a look to the chat. And first, for your attention as first, then after not only metaphoric coffee break, at least for me at this point, I will present the second set of slides in Italian, aimed at adding much more details about the four tools. But before the break, I would really like to share comments, opinions with you in a short interaction part, also answering to potential questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lorenzo, for your inspiring presentation. It was very nice to listen to you. So I have been reading the chat while you were giving your presentation, and there was one question, a very important one, and Fernanda already answered it. It was Tina Griffiths who asked if it was possible to share a link to the learning units and resources. And Fernanda asked, they said that they are not live yet, but they will be posted. For the rest, there are no questions, a lot of exclamations of agreements, I would say. But if there is anybody who has a question now, this is the right moment, of course. We have a couple of minutes left, so if anybody wants to ask a question to Lorenzo, by chat or live, you can also unmute. A lot of thank yous are coming in as we speak. Yes, good question. Will the slides be available? Is a question from Linda.
Sure. For me, no problem. It's up to you to decide, but for me, it's no.
Linda, we will post the recording and the slides on the LESLLA website. And we will give you a little email when we have published everything. That's an excellent question. Thank you so much.
And maybe in order to anticipate a possible question, it's important to say to everybody that all the LAT tools will be available by the end of April, both on the Council of Europe and the ALTE website. In two different ways in presenting them. In the Council of Europe website, you will find a folder for each language. So 12 folders, and in each folder has separate tools, the 4 LAT. So in each folder, you will find 4 separate Word documents, because the message is the invitation is to adapt the Word document according to your specific needs and contexts.
That is absolutely wonderful.
Thanks. On the ALTE website, you can find the 12 versions as PDF in this case, in only one document.
Okay, wonderful. So that will be available very soon then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lorenzo. Thanks again. There are no further questions. A lot of thank yous coming in. I suggest that we wrap up this meeting so you have a couple of minutes to have a glass of water or something before the second hour in Italian start.
Yes, we have to give some information about updates. So
yes,
if Lorenzo, you can share your screen again.
Sure.
And so just 2 minutes left, but there is at least one very important new.
Is it the right slide, Fernanda?
No.
No. Yeah, this one.
No. This is the first one. There is a new blog on presenting the new crowdsourced database. It's a database on research in the LESLLA field. This could be very interesting for everyone researching in the field. The next one is the third meeting of the discussion group on home language use in LESLLA contexts. And then I remind everyone who is interested in proposing a paper for the proceeding of the last year's symposium to that Friday, March 31 is the deadline. And then finally, here is, we have the dates of the meeting in Barcelona. That will be 2 sessions, one in person, September 7 and Friday 8, and a virtual session on September 9. So I invite everyone here to join us in Barcelona, in person or online. So, and please go back, go on. And no, then next. If you want to suggest other topics in these slides, when you will have on the website, you can find a link to the Padlet when you can post your suggestions. And thank you everyone for being here with us and sharing this moment.